I have a new podcast when it's all about women returning to work after maternity leave. And the biggest constraint and like driver for so far, I have a very small sample size, is specifically the flexibility of working from home and working in the office.
The Unnamed but Inspiring series. We talk about inspiring stuff. In tech specifically. I'm not crying, you're crying. We have Kara Cox with us today. Thank you for being with us, Kara. Or just me. It's just me.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So I only bring certified badasses on the podcast, as you know. And so Kara has a long history of being such badass. She's currently a software development manager at Tableau. Been doing related jobs for about 6-ish years. And she's also the host of my new favorite podcast called STEM Fatale. And I adore this podcast as someone who doesn't even really listen to podcasts. I know it's very hypocritical, but this podcast is incredibly smart. It's funny. And it's just relevant, right? About being a woman in tech and motherhood in tech. So we'll get more into that. She's also an Instagram content creator talking about careers in tech, leadership, womanhood in tech, etc. So again, thanks for being here, Kara.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And I feel it's so flattering to hear like those words used to describe me, especially like that's so funny. I mean, I have my like corporate agenda, but then the content creator world, because I feel so like insufficient and uneducated and small in that world. So yeah, thanks.
Well,
I'm so excited that I found at least one person that likes my content.
I mean, follower-wise, perhaps maybe on the smaller side, but 100% would not consider your content uneducated. I would definitely consider it the opposite. So, and I am going to talk a lot about your amazing opinions, but just wanted to start with your career. Let's talk about how you got into STEM first off, because I know you had a little bit of an interesting path. So could you start there and just share your story?
Yeah, for sure. So in some ways, I've been in STEM pretty much my whole life. I and even my whole adult life. So I went to school and got a degree in management information systems. I always had this interest in business. Like I always was drawn to like econ. My dad always brought us into like the stock market discussions, and I had this vision about like climbing the corporate ladder. So I always was planning to get my business degree. I was initially just planning to get it along with getting a degree in STEM because I also had opportunities in in STEM. I actually worked at a lab in high school and early college in biotechnology. But as I was going through and I was like just trying to get my prereqs for STEM, I was thinking of going into the medical field, and I was also getting my business degree. I just somehow started to lean more towards the business stuff. I wasn't even in tech at that point. And then I took a class that exposed me to information systems, which felt like a blend of technology, so something in the sciencey field and business, and it was on an upward trajectory. And so the rest was history. From there, I got my degree in that. I graduated. I also like rushed through college. I was only there 3 years. So I was making these decisions like fast as like a 19-year-old. And I got my first job out of college at Boeing in IT. So in some ways, like I said, I was always in technology. The thing is that degree is really for IT versus software engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked in tech at non-tech companies, which tech people kind of turn their nose down at.
I don't know why.
I know
it's a thing.
Silly. I think we're going to see less of that with this current like market and economic downturn and like less growth in tech. There's a lot of good opportunities at non-tech companies. Everyone needs software. So I pretty immediately was drawn towards project management, even in college, and was able to get opportunities like leading projects of pretty big influence right away. And that is really where my like bread and butter is leading like large scale, highly complex projects in the technology space. So I started my career, or in like what's called release management, which is an interesting field where we were launching the software that designed the planes and printed people's instructions for building the planes. And they did like 2 updates a year, and you had to like shut down the whole factory to do these updates.
Oh, damn.
So there were these big like launch plans that were super complex across like thousands of people. And then from there, I didn't stay at Boeing that long. Then I went to a small bank where I was like one of 2 project managers at the whole bank. I think there was about 1,500 people. And that's really where I got a lot of opportunity for influence. I was 23 and I was running the entire like a data center creation project. And we did these like
Wow.
these M&As where we acquired banks, and then with a bank, because of regulations, they can't be shut down more than 3 days in a row, including the weekend. So we would have to come in a Friday evening and cut over every single like system and physical machine and change their website and
That sounds
change their
intense.
emails and
Like
like
time
coordinate.
pressure.
Yeah, and coordinate that whole thing so it would be live on Monday as our new bank. And that was kind of I enjoy those sort of like I said, complex, like lots of moving pieces projects. So and in there, I also started managing some software development projects, but it's funny because a lot of it was more like infrastructure, um, and yeah, like release management is related to software. You're
Yeah.
doing like defect management and like that sort of thing, but not actual software development projects as my core. Somehow, I landed a job as a manager, like an IT manager from there at an
Uh-huh.
insurance company, and that was like such a huge opportunity. I'm so grateful that they were willing to hire someone who hadn't been a manager before, to do that. And that's really like that was managing a software development team. So that was like a big pivot. And then that was really where I like dove into software development management.
Okay.
Um,
If you don't mind,
yeah.
I've got a couple questions based on what you've said.
Mhm.
So first, just backtracking a little bit, I have one friend who got an MIS degree, but I feel like it's a very unknown degree. Could you just briefly explain like what that is or why you went into that?
Yeah. So why I went into it is that it was still a business degree, but it allowed me to get a bunch of technical classes in. Like it required it. The program I went with had like 7 or 8 like software development focused computer science classes that exposed me to that like technical side of things that I liked. Like I'd worked in like IT departments my like since I was in middle school. Like I was the assistant at the for the
Wow, it goes
school
way back. Yeah.
director. So I liked that piece of like it was kind of blending the technical piece with the business piece. And so I at the time, because I'm old, a lot of those technical classes were around like report building with like report systems that people don't really use anymore. But we also learned like UML diagrams and systems design, um, some security, like a focus on like security and networking, like kind of like CS 101 best practices, but just really a foundation of that. If I could go back, I would make myself get a degree, at least like a minor in computer science. That's like one
Really?
of my regrets. But I could still obviously patch that and just like go now. But again, the time thing we were talking about before.
Just to like get a deeper understanding or
Yeah, there's as we get into like career stuff, like a there's always a perception that women are not that technical, and or and I feel like I fit that stereotype in many ways because it started with my degree of like I don't have that foundation. I've just had to learn as I went along. And I've come a long way with overcoming that imposter syndrome, but ultimately I do have a different background coming from like I never was a developer, and that is an issue for some people. Like especially you hear from a lot of new engineers, junior engineers, especially they're like, "Oh, my manager was never a or I want a manager who was an engineer first." And usually like the more seasoned folks, they don't care about that anymore because they've
uh-huh.
like learned But yeah, so yeah, that's like in hindsight, like if it's great to get that. It's a great degree. It worked out well for me. A lot of people get a degree called informatics these days.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of comparable. But I would just encourage you to like lean into the technical side early in your career. But
I totally agree with you, but if it's any consolation or non-consolation, I have a master's in software engineering and people still don't think I'm technical. So
okay, yeah, that's the thing. It's
but
like
same thing, you know, I'm bubbly, like I don't know, I do artsy projects on the weekends. I don't know. I'm just not like, you know, video
yeah,
gamer, whatever the
for
technical
sure.
stereotype
Yeah,
is.
and that's the thing. Like I eventually like that was really crippling to me as an early manager, that fear and insecurity. But at some point working um after I got into tech, like real tech, and we were going through like architecture designs and running projects, and I was seeing like a bunch of these former engineer managers who hadn't been an engineer for like 10 years kind of coming through and like not doing any better in like the design space. They're not qualified anymore to do design. They're not in it every day. And also, in some ways, sometimes I was seeing them get their ego involved and
Yep.
like overriding what the engineers were saying they should do because they had this idea that they were an engineer, so they still know. And
Yep.
I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, I am still competent and good at my job. And like none of us are, no engineering or no manager is perfect. And so I just need to like lean into my strengths and and I've and figure out the jobs that make sense for me and how I
That
can
is
help
a
managers.
fantastic point about the whole engineering to leadership pipeline. That is one of my huge gripes as people who are really, really technical and they think, oh, you're really good at programming or whatever it is you do. And so we're going to make you a people manager. And it's like, why? You know, and then they become the worst possible people manager, right? So I empathize with like the need for non-engineers to have like a technical understanding of some sort, like not being just totally lost.
Mm-hmm.
That really doesn't help in a tech company, period, no matter what role you have, if you have zero understanding.
Right.
But honestly,
Mhm.
I completely agree with you that there's very little correlation between being a great engineer and being a great manager.
Yeah, and I think that it depends on the role too. So I have been really intentional in the roles that I've selected. And like there are some roles where having a very strong technical background is important. I have friends who are engineers who are like, yeah, we benefit from having an engineering manager who knows what's going on and like they can jump in and help debug. But there's a lot of roles where that's not that helpful.
Yep.
Like where when you're running these like big complex projects and it's a bunch of like bureaucracy and it's like highly technical project management and program management, um, and there is also a huge skill gap in this field because the tech companies do not hire for this skill. Like
Oh
at
yeah.
the big tech, that's another one of my gripes or rants I could go into. I'm so annoyed about like the technical interview process for management because then it creates it's like I get like again I get that we need some engineering
Oh
managers
yeah.
that are technical, but disqualifying all management unless they have this like super in-depth like some of the a lot of the I shouldn't even say some a lot of the big tech companies require like in-depth coding skills
Yeah,
for their
no.
like senior managers, and that's so stupid. It to me it feels like and like basically like a sexist or misogynist act to like eliminate, you know, and it's not even just sexist, but it's most of because of who is like getting the traditional degrees, it is like a way of like filtering out diverse people.
Well, it's also highly irrelevant. I think it's
Exactly,
just
and that's
not
the thing.
needed. Tech hiring is so broken.
Yeah.
I want to move to your podcast just because you talk about a lot of things that I don't have someone else who's going to talk about it. But
Yeah.
maybe I'll have to invite you back just to bitch about tech hiring and things
Yes,
like that
let's
too.
do that. It's one of my favorite things to bitch about.
Or book you for more than 30 minutes. So you, from a very early age, right, have been ambitious, have been in IT, segued over to the software development leadership roles, right, manager
Mhm.
roles. And one of the podcast clips that I think might have been one of the reasons I started following you was you talked about this discussion about ambition in women and whether or not
Mhm.
women are actually ambitious. And oh, ever since the dawn of work from home, oh, now suddenly women are more ambitious. Um, so I just kind of wanted to touch on your perspective on that, especially as someone who, again, kind of gunned for this leadership role from the beginning. What do you think is behind this notion that women aren't ambitious?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting that you ask. I'm actually reading a book called Career and Family right now by Claudia Golden. She won the economics Nobel Prize a couple of years ago
Hmm.
around the gender gap and how it relates to motherhood. And I think like the one piece there that I have learned, or I guess it's my opinion, but through observation, is that a lot of that like preconceived notion is related to motherhood. I think it's something like 86% of women become mothers by the time they're 50. So that's most people, most women in the US. Um, and it's hard. Like
Yeah.
we the systems are kind of built against us right now. And so you're having to navigate uh, a lot of systemic constraints and failures in order to become uh, in order to have a career and a family. But 86% of people are having a family. So then there's this like barrier that's put up. And even if you figure out how to navigate that and have a career and family like I did, I was very privileged and could hire childcare and did all the things, then there's still this thing called motherhood bias that comes in where people are assuming that you can't juggle it all. Like you're not as ambitious anymore, or you're not going to be able to work as hard, or your attention is divided. and and then there's like constraints of flexibility, and that's where literally what I was getting at. And like I was actually talking about a study. It was the Lean In like Women in the Workplace study that they do
Uh-huh.
every year, where they were saying that like, oh, women are more ambitious, and it's because of flexibility. It's because
Right. That's so frustrating to hear too, to
yeah,
just I hate how that's pinned on the individual, like, "Oh, we don't see you here, so it's your fault," or whatever the situation is.
yeah. And I have a new podcast, and when it's all about women returning to work after maternity leave. And the biggest constraint and like driver for so far, I have a very small sample size. It is specifically the flexibility of working from home and working in the office. A lot of like a few of them already they had to like step out of the workforce or change companies because the company that they had refused to give them flexibility. And these people like they had jobs that were office jobs that could be done remotely.
Right. Oh, I'm
And
sure.
so it's really frustrating. Again, getting to this whole like the behind DEI is such a hot topic. It was scary to even say that word, but before it became a witch hunt, um, I had some frustrations with the programs as they were, and like they just seemed like marketing ploys.
Yeah.
Where it's really like there's very obvious things you could do if you wanted to change your actual makeup and have it more diverse. For instance, take a close look at your hiring practices, and like if you're in tech, especially probably everywhere, and like how you're filtering for people and what you're prioritizing. And number two, offer flexibility. You don't need
Yep.
these like ERGs are great, but at the end of the day, like pretty much any woman, especially a mother, would take flexibility over an ERG if you have to make a cut. Like
Or
just
like
to
one
give
of
us
those like thanks or like a month of pink, like women are great. Like if you think we're great, then give us what we need to be
yeah,
successful.
and pay us,
Yeah,
please.
yeah.
I thought like, do you watch the Call Her Daddy podcast?
No, no.
Oh, well, they recently did an interview of Ellen Pompeo from Grey's Anatomy, and like the
Uh-huh.
title was like "Pick Me, Choose Me, Pay Me More." I just like I love that.
I think I saw some clips on TikTok from her interview actually. I love her, but I didn't see the podcast. Well, and
Yeah.
that's I feel like you really hit the nail on the head too, right? Because right now I'm childless, right? And up to this point, there have been, whatever, obstacles and prejudices and all these things, right? But it felt like with enough effort, if I was just willing to try hard enough, I could overcome it, blah, 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 right? Whether it was fair or not. And last year, I ended up unexpectedly pregnant, right? And ended up losing it, right? So
Mhm.
that is another thing too, is whether or not you want a family, any woman can get pregnant, right? That's
Yeah.
just part of womanhood.
Mhm.
And I remember going through that process, the bit of time that I was pregnant and the time afterward recovering. And I literally thought to myself, I don't know how people do this and hold a job. I don't know how I could, because I was in a high performing position. I was traveling constantly. I was working day and night. And I genuinely thought to myself, I didn't even know what to do, right? Like anybody could get pregnant or lose a pregnancy. And I'm like, what do I tell my boss? Like that I need a month off to like
Yeah. But it's
I
also
don't know,
weird,
but
like, yeah,
that
you
is where it becomes undeniable, the needs of women in order to support us in the workforce, right?
yeah, and there's this whole concept of like, "Oh, well, you chose to have a kid." Well, you know what? Society will come to a halt if we all decide to stop having
Right,
kids.
this the proliferation of the fucking human race. Like that's where it's like those like memes about like, oh, why are we alive? Like to support the stakeholders. It's like a complete dissonance between like why we are on Earth. Like, yes, money and ambition and all that is really important, but nobody can make money if no one exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry. That is always, it's hard, like, hard to go through. Like, incredible, like one of the hardest things in life to navigate through. Especially like unexpected. And I'm sure that's like a mind.
A whole roller coaster. I mean,
Yeah.
thankfully I've recovered now, and again, that could be its whole own conversation, right? But again, that is where it became crystal clear to me that like stuff was seriously not right with the workforce in terms of,
Yeah.
I mean, even just the fact that, right, like we work at tech companies right now. Tech companies notoriously typically offer some better benefits like a maternity
Mhm.
leave or parental leave, but
Mhm.
like the majority of the workforce not having that and having to apply for disability when like how can it be a disability when 50% of the population can or do experience like that just makes zero sense, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and also one thing to watch out for, I think with that, it's great to have that benefit. Don't get me wrong. If it's not equal, if there's not equal parental leave between men and women at the company, it is it makes it really likely or kind of inevitable for like almost like accentuated motherhood bias, because you have an employee who is a female who
Yep.
is going into her childbearing years, who is at risk of being gone for 4+ months every child she has, where her counterpart, male, is gonna take, like, 2 weeks off for each kid.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's fair, but, I mean, it's really lovely that they have those benefits, but there's even issues within that. Like, that's something I looked for in my current company when I was doing the job search, is close to equal parental leave benefits, because I think it influences a company culture so much,
Yeah.
especially as a leader there, at the company. But
Absolutely. And I feel like it also comes down to this discussion of supporting women in the workforce is more difficult. And so I feel like women should make the choice of either just not having kids or whatever drop. I feel like there is a lack of empathy at times about if that makes any sense. Like, well, if you can't hack it, maybe you're not meant to be here. I hear this all the time in tech and in engineering.
yeah,
A large minority of people who think that women should not even be working.
I know, isn't
And
that wild?
so I'm curious, like,
God.
I don't know that there is anything to say that you could say to that, but like, what would be your response to that kind of mentality when it comes to, yes, logically, we all see that women at the very least go through a childbearing phase that needs support. Yet there's a group of people that believes that means that we are not equipped or should not be here.
I mean, I think it's entire bullshit. Like, check your misogynist, like, preconceived notions if you feel that way, uh, because we have been proving that we can for like the last century. If you look at like when we are given the opportunity to, we like women like step up and thrive. Like that book
Yeah.
that I'm reading, like actually like during World War II, when it was all of a sudden like we needed women to work, they were like fucking great. Like, let's go.
Uh-huh.
And it only like changed when policies changed. Did you know that there was like an anti-marriage uh hiring practice? I think it was in the 1940s or 50s, like because of the Great Depression. So if you like teaching was one of the main ways for women to have jobs.
Uh-huh.
If you were married, you were disqualified or you were
Really?
fired.
Because they thought you couldn't handle
No,
both?
because they wanted to spread the wealth to different households
Okay.
because of.
Interesting.
And then that was at the government. These were really government employed jobs. And then a lot of private business did that too. It's harder to track. But and also there was like anti-nepotism rules before that in the early 1900s where there, and that's why one reason why a lot of notable women were childless at that phase and unmarried, because these women that worked in like universities and colleges where a lot of like discoveries were made back then, only if they got married to someone else who worked at the college, there was an anti-nepotism clause that made it so only one of them could work. So one of them had to
Wow.
give up their career if they got married.
And probably most likely the woman.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's insane.
So I guess that's a rant. But then on like the other side, that I actually want to write a LinkedIn article about this that we were talking, is like
Yeah.
the pitch of like mothers are like the most badass, like rugged, resilient women that I know. And I know that it can be kind of isolating. Like I'm not saying that women who are not mothers are not, but like you go through this thing when you give birth and you're raising a child where you're exposed to an impossible situation, something that feels impossible constantly. Like, and then you have to get through it. Sorry, I get emotional about this
No,
stuff.
that's okay.
And
You've like very naturally segued to every single topic that I wanted to ask about, and that was one of the next ones, so we can just go ahead and jump through
yeah,
it. But
well, and it gets to that is like and so we're used to doing this like impossible thing. And we have this, it builds this confidence in you that you're resilient and you're adaptable and you have problem solving skills. And all of a sudden, all the issues in corporate America, they seem so easy compared to
yeah.
everything else.
Well, on the
And
same note too, right? Of like, I mentioned, hey, it dawned on me just how world changing and resource intensive it is to bring life into the world and to recover from that. But at the same time, we often don't talk about all of the benefits and strengths, kind of like you're speaking to, of motherhood, right? Again,
mhm,
I have the same personality of like when there's an issue, I like do this hardcore deep dive, right? And just like trying to solve things and orient myself in the world, right? And like your brain changes, your brain physically changes in motherhood. The woman's entire everything entity completely changes in order to have to be more responsive, to be better understanding of various emotions, right? And I'm sure you
mhm.
understand this obviously a lot better than I do, but I mean, that was my next question I was going to ask is how has motherhood or whatever factors you feel are related to that, how has that improved you as a person or improved your career?
Yeah, I think overall it's made me much more clear on my priorities and my values. And it has made me a lot less tolerant of bullshit in a very good way. I think I am a very ambitious person, and my failure mode in the past, especially pre-kids, was trying to do too much. I call it being scope hungry, where like if
Mm,
there was an opportunity, I was just going for it. And before I knew it, I would find myself spread way too thin, not doing a good job at anything and having no time to be strategic. I'm much less likely to do that now. Because I don't have the bandwidth, but I also there's a higher cost like outside of work, and what that means is I'm much more selective and intentional in my career,
mhm.
and taking the opportunities that actually make sense for me, and then I can actually do a good job on them. So that has actually helped me in my career and as a leader. And in addition to that, there's kind of like a this is maybe the downside for um, direct reports, but an upside for people hiring me. Like I have like a little more almost like ruthlessness with it, with things like, or I'm more matter of fact. It's like if you're like not cutting it performance wise, like we're not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to try to help you. But I'm like before, especially as an early manager, I would like twist myself up in knots and spend like hours upon hours upon
Want to be
hours like
nice.
fretting about, yeah, like how am I going to tell this person that they're not they're not like meeting the bar, and like this might not be the right fit. Where now it's like, okay, like again, this gets to like getting exposed to like impossible things. This I've done that now, so now I can just like kind of systematically move through those like harder situations, and I'm still gonna be there and like do everything I can to help you, but there's no longer this like emotional turmoil about it because I have I guess the skills to navigate through that, and also like I have shit going on
The
outside
no
of
nonsense, more than no nonsense attitude. I mean, that's the way I would describe like what you've discussed is like it makes you a better leader, right? Like those are all qualities of a leader in terms of communication, prioritization,
yeah.
empathy, whatever, right? It runs the gamut.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what I was jumping into answering your question before around those like preconceived notions around like you can't hack it as a mother or whatever. It's like it actually makes me stronger
Right.
and
It couldn't be
better.
more ignorant of a
Yeah.
view. I'm definitely like genuinely going to have to talk to you again if you're ever interested because I feel like we've barely
Yeah.
scratched the surface of
Mhm.
important topics. And we've talked a lot about too like what we need in society and in the workforce in order for us to succeed. But right now the burden is on individuals, like whether we
Mhm.
like it or not.
Yep.
And again, I know a lot of us who have not yet entered motherhood feel like there's this choice between I am either going to be a mother or I'm going to be a career woman, right? That sounds so like 1950s, but I genuinely feel like that's still a problem.
Oh,
So,
especially with childcare costs now.
yeah,
Like
exactly,
unfortunately
exactly.
that's it's prohibitive in especially in that case. It's one of like the scary things about the cost of childcare. Yeah.
So what since you have been through it, whether or not you have it all figured out,
Never.
what would be your advice to aspiring mothers who also don't just want to be mothers, which probably characterizes most people. You know, everyone's dimensional.
Yeah. Well, and first off, there's nothing wrong with wanting to stay home and raise your children if that's your passion of like just wanting to be a mother. And you might not even have the option. That's a luxury to get that choice. You might
Yeah.
uh but um let's see. What did you say? What was my advice?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if it's just ways to cope, I mean, because I mean, I'll be honest with you. That's part of why I invited you on here is because I feel like it's a real problem right now. Like, this is something I think about constantly about like how
Mhm.
to prepare, what to do.
Yeah. So first off, I want to get on my soapbox and say don't let like failed systems and preconceived notions and uh the biases that you're going to face, like don't let that take away your choice. Like if you want to be a mother, you will figure it out and you should do it because also we need people in order to forge the path ahead. We need people to be going through it so that they're willing to they know the fight that's there. I will say like as before I had kids is like I knew that there were issues, but without being like exposed to it and thrown into it, um, I was pretty like oblivious
Yeah.
and I was certainly not involved. Like now I'm involved with a charity that is pushing for change. So first off, yeah, like don't let that take away your choice. And I know that that's coming from a privileged place, of course, but there are ways to figure it out, and I would love that's like my ask as a woman of like I need more help. I need more warriors out there. I need more mom friends
Yeah.
that we're grinding it out, and especially if you're like someone who has a successful career, you'll take those skills and you will navigate these systemic failures. Um, so don't worry. And then the other thing is, I guess there are things you can do to be intentional in your career. So like after you find out that you're pregnant, there's a bunch of things you can do uh to prepare for maternity leave and like give you the best shot of moving forward and then like persisting through after. There's a lot of guidance out there saying like try to get to a certain point in your career before you have a kid. I don't know. Like, yeah, there's some
That's
data
hard
that,
to like
yeah, but
pinpoint
sometimes you
like
don't,
that.
yeah, you don't have control over that.
Yeah.
And it's hard, I think, no matter what phase you're in. Like, I did that. I followed all those rules. I was a big lean in girly.
Yeah.
And I was like still like gobsmacked in the face by motherhood bias after my my first kid, and most people, like the vast majority of women I know, like at least with one of their kids, experienced extreme motherhood bias coming back to work, which is shocking. But anyways, sorry, that's like discouraging
No, I
people
mean
from having kids.
it is really unbelievable.
Um, but yeah, so I guess just like persist through it, you'll be okay. Find your mom, like if you become pregnant, especially, like find your mom friends and they will help you. We carry each other,
Band
like
together, yes.
yeah, we are a tribe, and like I will help anyone that reaches out to me, like whether I know them or not right now. If someone reaches out to me and they're in like a tough spot or struggling with like postpartum blues, we'll call it,
Yeah.
like there I will like connect with you, and that's how most moms feel. Like what I did the same thing when I was in a tough place coming back. I just reached out to random people on the internet, any friend that I knew who had become a mom, for like guidance on what to do, and they all like came through and helped me. So yeah, like there's this tribe that you get to be a part of. And again, I know, like with the in the childless world, thank you for giving me a platform here, because I know it can like sound um like I'm leaving people out, but it is a different
No,
like
I
life
mean,
experience.
I
And
genuinely think that women, for better or for worse, like we are complex. I think we go through
yeah.
many life phases. I mean, I want to do a whole like menopausal thing
Oh
episode too
yeah,
at some
that's like
point,
a
right?
huge
But
thing right
again,
now.
like we're all gonna go through it at some point. Well, maybe not all
Yeah,
of us,
and
but you
it's
get what I'm
like
saying.
so I value my child-free friends immensely, but I also like my mom friends are like they carry me through it. They lift me up. We're like going through it together. So yeah, get your mom friends, be clear with your work about what your expectations are, write it all down, and just like buckle up. You're gonna do great.
Trust yourself, make your own decisions, find that support group, and
And don't give
have
up.
boundaries in life.
Like
Yeah, don't give up.
when like
Yes.
the barriers when the barriers come, yeah, it totally sucks, but you're a strong person. You're gonna navigate through it and like figure out where you're supposed to be.
Cara, this has been an amazing episode. I'm sorry for touching on so many emotional topics.
No worries.
I'm just so excited that you talk about this that I wanted to cram in as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. No, I don't mind. I'm like Kristen Bell. I don't know if you ever saw her like sloth clip. Like if I'm like
You're
outside of
making
like
me
a
feel so
forest, I
removed
might
from pop
cry.
culture. I'm like, I have no idea what these things are.
Well, this is like millennial pop culture, so it's like from like 15 years ago or 10 years ago.
Okay. I'm a baby millennial, but I feel like sometimes it does not
I'll send you
translate.
that clip. It is gold. So
We'll definitely have to have you back. And I want to promote your podcast as well as anything else you want people to know about. So where can people find your podcast?
it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called Stem Fatale. I think we did a 10 episode series. I'm actually launching a new podcast, so it's coming soon on your like on women's experience with maternity leave and returning from maternity leave. I'm really excited about that. That should be out uh hopefully in the month of April, if not early May. So watch out for that. I'll probably promote it on Instagram.
Okay, I
Uh,
didn't know this was a whole separate podcast. So you've got two podcasts going now.
yeah, well, the Stem Fatale one, we don't have any more episodes coming out.
Okay, okay. Well, you
So
guys should still check that one out. That was a good series.
yeah, but you should still yeah, people should still go listen to it. Like the more views, the better. But yeah, we each have our own podcast, me and the co-host Josie, and then we go on each other's podcasts. But that podcast was a little too much heavy lifting for me for this phase of life as far as doing the research
It
and
was well
everything else.
done, yeah. Okay, perfect. So I will link in the description to that podcast. And thanks again for being on, Cara. And thanks everyone again for watching.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.